Okay, well, welcome, Allison. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell me a bit about what you do and what is your background?
Sure. So my name is Dr. Allison Brown. I am by day a school counselor still in the public school system, working with students in grades 6 through 12 in an alternative setting. I'm also an author, recently published. I work with a spiritual modality called BQH, or Beyond Quantum Healing, which is one of the most fun things that I do. My husband and I work together in the metaphysical realm, and that's kind of my specialty in helping folks heal and discover and explore. And so all of those things, besides being a wife and mom, keep me pretty busy.
I can imagine, yeah. And I think it's also great that you can share this with your husband and that you do things together in this area of beyond quantum healing. And
Right. That good fortune is not lost on me. I understand and appreciate every day how unique we are in that aspect.
I can imagine. And this morning I was watching a webinar from the Quantum Healers
Ah,
Forum, and I saw the session with you and your husband, and I thought it was amazing.
that was very interesting for many reasons. And if we have time at the end, we can certainly chat about that. But that was really a fun and unique experience for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And today we would like to talk about the book that you've published. I noticed that you published your first book in April this year. And
Mhm.
could you show it to us and tell me a bit about it?
Absolutely. Sure.
The
It is
journey
called
within.
The Journey Within, for a Christian's Guide to 14 Non-Traditional Spiritual Practices.
And can you tell me what it's about? What are you sharing about those practices?
Absolutely. So primarily, it begins by exploring my reconciliation with mainstream conservative Christianity and the greater spiritual perspective. And so I was kind of in that little box for quite some time until probably my mid 40s when I started to explore. I had questioned, the tenets of my religion all of my life, and there were some things that just didn't jive or make sense to me, and I had a really difficult time finding answers to those things, and people didn't want to talk about it really. So in spite of those misgivings, I kept on with being raised as a Christian, first in the Episcopalian tradition, and then as an adult we moved into a Methodist church. But I still had those questions, and so when I finally started having my own direct experience with God, I ventured out of the fear that I had been sort of raised in and saturated in, and I started to explore. And through that exploration, I discovered a number of unique practices, the things that I talk in my book, that help us to heal, that help us to have a direct line of communication with our guides and with Source, with the divine beings that we learn about in church, whether it's angels or Mother Mary or Jesus. And it was so fulfilling and so rewarding and enriching in my life that I wanted everybody to have that experience. So really the book is primarily helping folks let go of the fear of exploration, because not every one of these practices will resonate with everyone. And I'm not asking anyone to throw the religion out the window, because it isn't about that. It's about expanding the box,
Yeah.
expanding your understanding of what this can be, and using that exploration to enrich your life.
Wow. And um, I'm wondering, what are the tools that you are talking about? Because I noticed that you are writing about taboos within Christianity. And first thing that comes to mind is, would that be Reiki, for example? Is that one of the tools that you are referring to?
Writing.
Reiki.
Oh, Reiki,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, 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 of course. That was the first thing that I explored as I started to look into these practices, because in the church, my exploration began with hands-on healing. So in my church, hands-on healing was okay. Most churches that I had been affiliated with, they were okay with praying and laying hands on people. Some people are still not. And so the very first communication that I had with God directly was I was told to start a hands-on healing team in my church. I didn't know where that information came from. I now recognize that as a claircognizant moment. Didn't know that term at that time. So I went to my pastor. My pastor said, I knew you were coming. And I said, wow, okay, well, I guess we got the same message. So I started a hands-on healing team in my church. And that's when I knew that I could speak to God myself, that he spoke to me, or she, use he for the reference, but, and that I was being used as a healer. I knew that that was taking place at that time. And so when I started to leave the church or separate a little bit from the church, that's when I started exploring Reiki, because it also was a hands-on healing practice. And I wanted to see how that would mesh or jive with what I already knew about healing. And so what I discovered, which is really one of the prime lessons that I hope to share in this book, is that it's really not different concepts as much as different language and lingo. So I knew the healing energy that was coming in when I was in the church as the Holy Spirit. Now I recognize it's called Reiki. It can be called whatever, source, universal, divine consciousness, whatever you want to call it, but it's the same thing. And so the healing worked in the same way through me to others from source. And so if we can come to the understanding that it's really about language and terminology, and release our stereotypes and our preconceived notions enough to have these kinds of conversations rather than being afraid and backing off, which is what many Christians do, then I think we're going to come a long way in healing the divide, the gap between these two camps, really. And so in the book, I divide the practices that I talk about into 3 areas. The first section deals with knowing yourself, discovering yourself. So I talk in there about yoga and meditation and things like that, things that you can use to uncover the essence of who you are. In the second section, I talk about communication. So we talk about ways to communicate with your guides or with source via angels, tarot cards, that sort of stuff, mediums, psychic ability. And in the last section, we talk about healing. So using the self-discovery, using the healing, using the self-discovery and the communication to heal us. So I talk about cranial sacral, we look at using crystals to heal. We talk about the Reiki and that. So, that was sort of the process that I worked through as I was going. And so I thought that would be helpful to kind of chunk it that way.
Yeah. Wow. It really sounds amazing. Yeah. And while you're talking, it reminds me a little bit about someone who I've been exploring and doing sessions about, which is Hildegard van Bingen. And I think she was a great example of how she integrated all these tools within her Christian practice, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I think it's so wonderful that you are doing this and that you are sharing these tools and breaking the taboo. And could you give us another example of other practices in your book?
Well, one of the interesting things that we uncovered as I became a Reiki master and started working on my husband, that's when his intuition started unlocking. So as I laid hands on him, things just opened up for him. Now he had not been raised in a church at all, so he didn't have any of that construct or blocks, which was really good. And he also had a lot of sort of intuitive hits when he was young, some out-of-body experiences that he couldn't talk about or reconcile when he was older in high school. And so he put that on the back burner. He joined the Coast Guard and he is retired military. So, he wasn't raised with the woo-woo either. Yeah. And so when I started laying hands on him and working on him, it unlocked a whole bunch of stuff that he hadn't even thought about since childhood. And it immediately started turning him on. He started getting psychic ability. He was reading people's minds. He was connecting through mediumship and all of that. And so within 2-3 years, our whole world completely shifted and changed. So one of the things that I write about in the book is the chapter on psychic and mediums. And I know this from experience. So what I try to explain is how healing this is. And a lot of Christians will finally break down the fear barrier, excuse me, when it comes to a family member who has passed, because they're so desperate for that connection. They're so desperate to know that their loved one is still alive or still somewhere, or that the death of the body is not the end. And so, unfortunately, sometimes it isn't until we have been backed completely into a corner, or we are at wit's end, or we're out on the ground crying out for help, that we're willing to explore some of these things. And I know that, you know, as much as I was afraid of psychics and mediums, and the Old Testament admonishes you from looking into that, it is an amazingly healing thing for the people who connect with their loved one across the veil. And there isn't anything evil about it at all.
No.
And so what I really want to get across to people is that you don't have to wait until you're, you know, backed into a corner or on the ground flailing in pain or at a crisis. You don't have to wait for that to be able to explore and enjoy some of these amazing practices. Now, all of the 14 practices in the book, I'm not experienced in every single one of them, but I have at least had a session or a little bit of exploration myself so that I can share my personal experience of it. For instance, cranial sacral. I've had one session and it was really comfortable and amazing and relaxing, but I'm not by any means an expert on that. Now, other things like the psychic mediumship and Reiki and other things I've had a little bit more experience with. But these were all things that I explored as I broke free from that Christian paradigm, and that I think could be helpful for others.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And could you share a little bit about how Beyond Quantum Healing came into the picture? How did you discover Beyond Quantum Healing?
I love to tell this story, so I'd be happy to. So as I said, my husband was starting to open up as I had practiced Reiki. And this was probably around, I think 2014 is when I got Reiki trained and started working on him in 2015. So it hasn't been really that long. And so as I was practicing on him, I think things were opening up that he didn't realize. So he was on Facebook one day and he saw a person who had just been recently trained in QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique with Dolores Cannon. He had no idea what that was, but he's like, oh, she needs 25 free test subjects. You know, Dolores required that. He goes, I'll sign up for that. So he tells me about this. And I said, what? I had been looking to have a session for a long time, and the closest person was several hours away, and it was very expensive, and I just had not done it. And I thought, if you got the last session, I'm going to be very upset because I wanted one. Well, anyway, we both ended up getting one. So anyway, this woman who's now a friend of ours, she came to the house and she put him under, and it turned out that he was a somnambulist. So he completely went into a trance. Probably it's about 5% of the population that does that.
Yeah.
And when they came out of the room, they both looked like they had seen a ghost. I mean, this was only her third session or so. He went under and started channeling Enoch. Now, what's interesting about that is that Enoch is in the Bible, and my husband had no idea who Enoch was. He was not raised with the Bible or with church. I knew who that was. So when they came out and said that he started channeling Enoch, I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? So Enoch was, I think, Noah's grandfather. There's not a whole lot about him in the Now Bible, but there is a whole chapter called the Book of Enoch, if anyone wants to explore that was taken out of the original Bible now. But anyway, so she was fascinated that he was channeling. He was fascinated that he was channeling. So she said she would come over once a week or so to help him be induced and channel and see what information we could get from Enoch. Because I mean, he's huge, right?
Yeah.
He's Archangel Metatron.
Yeah.
So she came for a couple of weeks and she allowed me to sit in on one or two of the sessions, which was really interesting and funny. At that time, when I was listening to her do her practice, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so boring. I said, how does she sit here? Because sometimes with your clients, the information comes rather slowly,
yeah,
or it's just you're trying to pull teeth to get information, or just the higher self speaks slowly.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there waiting for the information and this and that. And I just remember thinking that I could never do this, which is funny because I absolutely love it now. I love it. So we thought after a few sessions, we can't call her every time we want to have him to channel. So at that exact time, that was in the summer of 2018, Candace had developed Beyond Quantum Healing. This is our friend, our mutual friend, Candace Crawl Goldman, who developed Beyond Quantum Healing. We know that she's a protege of Dolores Cannon, worked with her for about 9 years very closely. And after Dolores passed, she realized that this process needed to evolve. And with Dolores's blessing from across the veil, she developed BQH, and she had initiated this online course that summer. I think it was in June or July. So in July, my guides were pushing me towards that course. And I still was hesitant. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And so at that time, I don't know if you remember, Patricia, but she was doing some little competitive games to win a discount or whatever on Facebook.
Yes,
so she
I
would
remember.
Put these like, guess what bird is sitting outside my window? I'm like, who the heck knows what bird said? I don't know. Well, anyway, so she did some kind of crazy thing like, I just opened my book to page such and such. What page was it? I'm like, oh, for gosh sakes. So I told my husband, I said, you're the medium. Tell me what page it is so I can win this session or whatever, win this course. And he did a guess, and I did a guess, and I won. He didn't win. He wasn't even close. So I won a 30% discount or something like that. And I thought, okay, my guides are telling me it's time to take this course, obviously. So I took the course, and the rest is history. My very first client was my spouse, Will. And sure enough, I went through the induction. You know, I'm new, I'm green. I didn't know what I was doing, but I went through the induction, and he went out like he normally does. And I mean, I thought, we've been married 31 years. I figured my voice, he would be weird about it, or he wouldn't be able to get into it. So I thought for sure it might not work, even though I knew the process would work and I did trust it, but it was my husband. Well, anyway, he went out, and I had his team. By that time, we knew he had a team that would always come through, which consists of Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Source, and Enoch.
Yeah.
And I had the team for an hour and 45 minutes, and I could ask them whatever I wanted to. And it was amazing. So I asked them, I said, I'm new at this. Am I supposed to do this just to help my husband channel? And they said, absolutely not. You're supposed to do this to help other people heal. I said, okay, well, you're going to have to help me because I don't really know what I'm doing and I need your guidance. And they said, absolutely, we will be with you every step and we'll help you. And sure enough, I went ahead and put myself through the paces, and I did 25 free sessions just for practice. So I would get experienced at the different types of clients, the different types of energies, what could happen, because as you know, these sessions, anything can happen.
Yeah.
And any divine being can come through, and you have to be kind of ready and learn not to panic, not to freak out if nothing's happening or whatever. I mean, and there were some very unusual things that happened, but they only gave me little bites at a time. Each client was a little bit different, a little new lesson. And so with that, that was just the beginning of this beautiful journey through quantum healing. And since then, I've had the privilege of meeting Candace and working with her, as you know, in this course not too long ago. But it has been the most amazing wild ride. I mean, I would never have envisioned my life looking like this at this point in time as conservative. I mean, I was a teacher and a counselor, school counselor, very conservative profession, very conservative religion.
Yeah.
My husband was not raised in any of this. So, I mean, our lives have done a 180 and I couldn't be happier,
Wow.
frankly.
Amazing. Yeah. And I wonder, did Beyond Quantum Healing also changed your perspective of what God is, or did it change your communication with God?
Wow. As you're saying that, I'm getting head to toe goosebumps. Absolutely. And it wasn't, I mean, I always believed in God and I always knew God existed and I knew I could have a relationship with God, but it was always a one-way street. I was talking to God, but I never felt like I heard God talking to me. And when I'd sit in church, the songs would resonate with me and give me goosebumps or tears. I know that now looking back, that every time I would cry, it was because I was feeling spirit within. So that did happen in the church, but it wasn't any kind of direct message or information or direct guidance that I could put to use. It was more trust, which you need, of course, but it was just trusting that God was with me, even though I didn't hear him.
Yeah.
But when you can physically have those experiences, it just really helps to solidify that knowing, so that you can develop more trust, greater trust in knowing that the times that you don't hear, you know that they're still there.
Yeah, exactly. And I also feel that during a session, you can feel the energy of God, and which you can't describe in words, but and it doesn't come through specifically in language, but it's there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so
Yeah.
I'm not what you would call an empath, which is interesting. My husband is.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, I can go to the store and energies don't bother me, or if I'm interacting with somebody, I'm not necessarily sensing their energy. I have been more recently getting more vibrations and sensations in my body like that, but not as a true empath. So when people have sessions and they talk about being able to feel this palpable presence, I'm not getting so much of that still yet. But the tears do come, and that's my sign that God is with me. And that's what's happening right now. I'm feeling like I could just start crying because God is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Source is here.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does it reflect in the rest of your life? I mean, does it ripple through in your day job, or how does it influence? Because it changes your life, doesn't it? If you,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And it took a number of years before I was able to come out of the closet. I think,
yeah,
we often associate that terminology with someone who's um, coming out of the closet regarding their sexuality or their gender preference or whatever. But I think everybody has a coming out of the closet moment for whatever, a lot of different things. And mine was about revealing myself to not necessarily believe in the tenets of my Christian faith, because almost everybody in my purview, everyone in my circle was a Christian. And so that was really difficult for me to come out and say, I don't necessarily believe that we go to hell. I don't necessarily believe, that we only have one life and all of those sorts of things. And but when I came out, I realized that I didn't get backlash. And so it's been easier for me to continue to live what I know now and live my truth. And it becomes increasingly easy as you go along to live your truth. So there is a ripple effect. Luckily, my children, when this all started happening, they were probably about 14 and 15. So although they were raised in the church, I was able to come around and show them some other possibilities, so that they can kind of make up their own mind and have all of those experiences to draw from. Interestingly, I also had to come out to my coworkers at work probably, I think it was about a year ago. But I know that I'm in this particular school for a reason, to hold the light in that building. It's for kids who are troubled and at risk. And so we had a student who came to me and he had some severe, weird issues, for lack of a better word. And there was going to be a diagnosis of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't think that's what it is. I think this child is connecting with multidimensional realms.
Yeah.
And luckily, I was able to speak to the parent, who also said that's what he thought. And I was like, whoa, okay, good. Yeah. The parent was on board with that. And so in essence, I was able to help that child and not have him put on meds. I think he was only in 6th grade, maybe 12, and they wanted to put him on some serious meds. So, but in doing that, I had to come out to my colleagues and explain to them why I thought what I thought. Why do you think he doesn't have a mental health diagnosis? You're a counselor.
Yeah.
And so I had to say why I felt like he was interacting with other realms. And so I had to tell them that my husband was a medium and a psychic and a channel. I had to tell them that I know this because I talk to beings all the time.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting because we had, we had our school psychologist there. We had a mental health counselor there. We had the whole middle school team was sitting there, and they're all staring at me going, So they listened politely. They did. And
Yeah.
I said, I need you to respectfully hear what I have to say, whether you agree with it or not, but you have to listen to what I have to say. Anyway, so it was a huge coming out. And I don't know if they look at me differently. I don't know. And frankly, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just try to live every day being who I am and knowing what I know. And because I feel so privileged to do this work and so in awe and so inspired and just so humbled by everything that I've borne witness to, that I can't live any other way. There's just no way to
Yeah.
deny that or to live in
And this,
denial of that. And so really I just don't care
yeah,
anymore what people think of me. And it's a beautiful thing and it's very liberating.
absolutely. And so important. And I think it can be life-saving for others, especially
Mhm.
for young people who are going through these type of crises, which I feel that many young people are going through. And I think in many cases it's about energy imbalance and picking up energies from others. And when you can learn those young people to see the difference and to feel the difference, this can mean a totally other path in their life. I mean,
Mhm.
if it would be restricted by medication. So, wow, that's really huge that you uh, had the guts to talk about it. Yeah,
Well, it certainly wasn't easy. And
yeah,
it did take what you call guts. It did take guts because educators are, we live by this phrase, go along to get along. And the majority of us are female.
yeah,
And so a lot of times we're just pushovers and we don't stand up for ourselves and we don't rock the boat or make waves. And it's very, very old school in terms of it takes a long time for the education monster to change,
yeah,
a long time.
yeah,
So, sometimes I find myself just butting my head against a wall, especially these days, because things are changing so quickly. And I know that I'm there to help bring in the new education system, whatever that looks like.
yeah,
But in the meantime, it's
yeah,
very challenging to be there.
yeah. I can imagine. And well, I have huge respect for you that you are doing this, and in this
Thank
way,
you.
you're also breaking a taboo, aren't you? I guess this
Mhm.
is another perfect example of how you can break taboos and create space in your life by talking about it and by just being who you are. So, yeah, really amazing. Yeah,
Right. It is about talking about it. I mean, we never solved anything by pushing it back into the closet or
yeah,
sweeping it under the rug. It doesn't work
yeah,
that way.
yeah, yeah,
So even until you rip the band-aid off or rip the scab off and let it all out and let it heal appropriately, it's not going to change.
absolutely. And I just realized that these patterns they don't happen instantaneously. They are given to us by our ancestors, and they go through families for many generations. And so I guess changing these patterns also needs some ancestral healing. And I believe that you also have written about that. Can
That is
you?
so interesting that you bring that up, and it's true. So, for example, I know as a counselor that mental illness runs in families. And so it's a real thing in terms of our physicality.
Yeah,
And when we do these channeling sessions through my husband, so for people that for whatever reason can't, they feel like they can't be hypnotized or they are nervous about it, my husband will do a channeling of their higher self. And so when we talk to them, they tell us that they incarnated at this time to heal those ancestral wounds or that history and to stop. They actually are stopping it and healing it back. And so from this point forward, it's opening a whole new chapter in their life, starting a whole new cycle for their family,
Wow.
physically and mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And so, yes, what was interesting was as this initial book was being published, The Journey Within, I went with a traditional publisher, which of course took a while. It took about 14 months. And in the meantime, towards the end of that time frame, I was invited to write a chapter in another book about ancestral healing, which is really interesting. And I would say coincidental, but there are no coincidences in this realm, right?
Yeah.
And so the book that I contributed to is called The Ancestors Within, which is very interesting. And I wrote chapter 7, which is about using spiritual hypnosis. BQH is what I use, but there are other modalities to heal ancestral trauma. The whole book contains 25 different stories. There are 25 collaborators and contributors to this book where they've written their own story about ancestral healing using various modalities. And each of us has provided a tool at the end of our chapter, something that the reader can actually walk away with to use to heal a particular aspect of their life. So for the price of the one copy of the book, you have 25 usable tools, actionable tools that you can take away and start healing this trauma. You're right. And so, these issues, like you said, like schizophrenia or any other mental illness or alcoholism or child abuse or, histories of abuse in general, any of those things, as horrible as they are, can be used for great, great healing, not only for yourself, but your family, your friends, the people that have witnessed this, all sorts of ripple effects with this. And so when we can look at those things as a blessing, and it takes a long time, don't get me wrong. It's not easy to bless your abuser. It's not easy to bless the miscarriage that you had or the rape or whatever. It's very, very difficult. So this is a hard topic to contemplate and to come to grips with. However, everything is of God and everything can be used for good and used for our healing. So, yeah.
Exactly. Wow. And I feel that when you talk about these illnesses and how it actually is something that can heal ancestral patterns, it reminds me that when I look at members in my family who had to deal with that, I saw it as a healing process and not as an illness. It's as if the consciousness or the soul is saying like, okay, we can't do this anymore. We have to do it differently and we have to change. And so although it may seem as an illness or a crisis, I always felt that it's the healing process that's happening. So I think it's so fascinating what you're sharing about those tools. So I'm definitely going to buy your books and read them. Yeah. And
but you're right. We call it a healing crisis often. We call it a healing crisis. Or sometimes if you start a new treatment plan for a legitimate issue that you have, it gets worse before it gets better because it's a healing crisis and you have to dig it out. And I think that's kind of indicative of what's happening on our planet right now. It seems to be more in crisis, even though we know that there is great, great peace and healing coming. And we actually see it before I think the mainstream can see it. But what they're seeing is all of this garbage being uprooted and evil and things that are happening. And what in the heck is going on with Earth? I mean, all of these things, it's just horrible. But that's because all of that's been there. It's not new. It's been there. We just haven't seen it because it's been buried and put back in the closet and brushed under the rug. And so until we rip off the Band-Aid and we expose it, it's sort of like a pimple coming out, then can we heal it? So you're right, in all areas of healing, it comes across first as a crisis, ugliness, before it can be healed.
Yeah. I'm getting really goosebumps when you say this, because it makes me realize that what's happening in the world right now can be seen in the same way that it's the healing process that's going on. That's so
Right.
hopeful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Always darkest before the dawn is
yeah,
another term that came around for a reason.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, I can only encourage people to read your books because I think they really sound fascinating and even something that well, they are topics that we need right now. And so, yeah, I think it's wonderful that you have written this book. And um, I'm wondering, is there going to be another book that you're going to write with your husband?
Kind of.
Yeah,
So uh, now that I've sort of primed the pump, because I'm really a writer at heart. I've always loved writing. I've been writing since I was young, but I just never knew what I was going to write about in terms of a book. And then once it sort of hits, it's kind of like no stopping, right?
yeah,
So the third book that I'm actually working on right now, my husband started doing pet channelings. So what we realized was we had 3 cats, and 2 of them were quite ill or had issues. And so he was already channeling other beings and people's higher selves. And I thought, well, before I put my cat down, because it had gotten to the point where I was going to put the cat down, I thought, well, let me just try to talk to them. I mean, we've talked to everybody else, right? So sure enough, I was able to call all 3 cats in and have a conversation with them, their higher selves. It was so profound and amazing. In fact, I almost enjoy speaking to the animals more than the humans because they're so connected. They don't have a veil, and
yeah,
they're just so genuine and just so they're just unbelievably loving that I'm in tears pretty much every time we have a pet channeling. So we discovered that because this was so healing for our family, that we really needed to share this with others. And so we offer pet channelings, mostly of pets that are alive, but also
yeah,
of pets that are deceased if people want to speak to them.
yeah,
And so I have gotten so many nuggets of wisdom from these animals throughout the past year or so that my next book is about wisdom from the animal kingdom directly from their voices.
oh, wow.
So, in preparation for the book, not only have I taken excerpts from the channeling sessions from dogs and cats and horses and normal pets, but we've also deliberately called in collectives of animals. So, on our web or his YouTube channel, you can see where we've talked to the bee and wasp collective, which is fascinating. We've talked to a lot of animals that people don't care for, like snakes
Yeah,
and rats.
yeah,
Um, who else did we talk to? We talked to eagles. We've talked to the manatees, dolphins, and whales, which were fascinating. I've talked to squirrels. So all of those animals have a lesson for humans.
yeah,
They all are here on Earth for a reason to help us evolve, whether we recognize it or not, or appreciate them or not. And so I'm super excited to get that out for people to read, because if you can get through it without crying, I'll be
oh.
surprised. But it's just such amazing information. And
Yeah,
so I'm hoping to get that out by the end of the year if I can. And I'm going to probably do the self-publishing route this time now that I have experience with the other,
yeah,
because it's just so time consuming to do it the other way.
yeah,
So I want to get this one out for people to see. So yeah, that's the third one. I don't know what the fourth one will be. Initially, I thought it was going to be channeled information from higher selves of humans, and
yeah.
I have a whole lot of transcribed material for that. So I may or may not. That one's a little bit bigger of a project. I'm a little nervous about jumping into that one, but
One step at a time. And I'm sure
yeah.
that it
But it's
will
almost,
become clear.
you may or may not know, but it's almost addicting, don't you think? Once you
Yeah,
write a book and you're just like, oh, that felt
yeah,
so good. You just
exactly.
want to do it again and again. I do anyway.
I feel the same. And I think the only negative side of writing is that you hardly have any time to read books.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very,
Which is why
very
I
true.
wanted to start doing these interviews, because I do want to know about these books and about the authors. And so, yeah.
Right. And to hear what other people are putting out there and what's available. Yeah.
Yeah.
So both of those books can be found on Amazon if people are interested. The Ancestors Within and The Journey Within.
And are they as a paperback and ebook, or?
Well, they're supposed to be ebooks, but they're both so new that the ebook isn't available just yet.
Oh, yeah.
But they're both in paperback.
Okay, wonderful. And can they also be found on your website?
Yes, if someone's
Yeah.
interested in a signed copy, because that one will take a little bit longer. If
Yeah.
you want it in 2 days with Amazon 2-day shipping, or at least
Yeah.
in the United States, you can order it right away on Amazon. But yes, I'll be happy to sign a copy and send it out on my website, which is drallisonbrown.com, DRALLISON Brown.com. You'll
Wonderful.
see the link there. Yes, ma'am.
Great. And well, I think that I will share this interview on my website, and probably also on the Quantum Healers website. So if people want to find you and information about your book, they can also go to quantumhealers.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or to look into BQH or all sorts of fun things on that website. Yes, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful site and YouTube channel.
And there are so many wonderful practitioners on the Beyond Quantum Healing forum, aren't they?
Absolutely. You're one of them. Thank you for the blessing of offering your space for this and for other practitioners. It's a beautiful thing that you're doing. Thank you. And Candace as well. And so, as a matter of fact, if you wanted to listen, if anyone wanted to listen to some pet channelings, we did 5 of Candace's pets on her farm. And it's
Wow.
fascinating. We did the horse and some cats and a donkey. Those are all on her YouTube channel, Quantum Healers YouTube channel, as well as I think she might put up that tandem session you were talking about.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of neat interviews that she's done on there as well.
Great. Well, I'm sure I'm going to listen to the pet interviews. Yeah, would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just one question, because I think we need to bring it to a close. But I was wondering, when you do pet channelings, do you ever ask questions to pets, how they see God?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, they pretty much tell us. So they
really.
didn't realize, they don't really understand that we don't have a direct line to source. So
Yeah.
they understand and they always have an understanding of their connection to source. So they tell us that the 2 most exciting times in their physical life is when they come into a body and when they leave the body. And so although they understand that it's disappointing to the humans when the pet's body transitions,
Yeah.
they say it's an amazing time because they're back with the all. So
Ah,
they tell us that they come in from the all, from this just huge bundle of energy, and it's cleaved off, is a word I've heard many times. It's cleaved off and put into a body, and then they have this beautiful experience in the body, and they love it, whether it is a challenging life, for what we would think is a challenging life for a stray dog, for example,
yeah.
or whether it's a pet who is sitting in the lap of luxury in someone's home. Either way, they love it. And then they say when they transition, they understand that they're going back into the all, and they're excited about it because they're back with what they call like their friends, or all of the people that they know, all of the animals that they know, all of everything that they know. So,
Wow.
so they're thrilled about that. And so, yes, they understand God all the time in
Yeah.
every way.
Yeah. Oh, that so resonates with me. And I remember when my dog passed over, and we buried her in the garden, and it was dark, so I could see the stars, and we were doing some little prayer when we had buried her, and then we saw these blue purple lights moving all the way up to the sky, and it was amazing. I've never seen anything like it, and I thought, wow, there she goes, she's going back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly.
that's exactly
Yes.
what you're describing right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing, huh?
It really is. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. And they're all here on assignment. They all have an assignment, whether they're with a family or not. They have a job, a mission that
Yeah.
they understand.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun to talk to the animals about what is your assignment with your human family. And it's usually about patience or unconditional love or
Yeah.
helping them to heal in some way or things like that. And so it's a beautiful thing.
Fascinating. And what a blessing that you're able to channel this and to communicate with them, isn't it?
It's unbelievable blessing. It's an unbelievable blessing. I mean, I would do it every day, all day if I
Yeah.
could. It's so much fun. It really is, especially with the animals. I just love them.
Yeah. Well,
In
thank
fact,
you so much.
it's
Oh,
getting
sorry.
more difficult not to cry when I do those sessions. And I'm like, I got to get it together. I'm the
Yeah.
practitioner here, but it's like,
Oh,
what?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine. Yeah. Yeah. They have a way to go straight to your heart.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes, they do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And is there anything that you would like to share with people who are wanting to buy your book?
Well, I think they know where to go, either to Amazon or to my website. If anyone's interested in a session, my husband and I have a combined website called
Palm
palmandlotus.com.
and Lotus?
Palmandlotus.com. So you could go there. There's a link to it from my site also, but you could see the different modalities that we offer. And obviously, we do a lot of them remotely. Um, so if someone wanted a session remotely, we've worked with people all over the world, and here you are in Amsterdam. How exciting. I've been
Yeah.
to Amsterdam once. It's a beautiful city. We were there a couple of years ago, and it was during a heat wave. I don't know if you remember this. It was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And it was like 93 degrees or
Oh, yeah.
94 degrees in Amsterdam. We were sweating. I thought, oh my gosh, this is as bad as South Carolina where I live. But we went to the Van Gogh, I think it was, museum.
Ah, yes.
That's one of the highlights. I love Van Gogh work.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
And of course, going through the canals on a boat and trying to think what else. Had some good meals. It's a beautiful city. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is. And well, I live actually on the south west part of our country, near to the Belgium border.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I live near the water. So, but it is beautiful. And yeah, I do share that love for Van Gogh. Yeah.
In fact, the reason we went to Amsterdam is because we've had 11 exchange students from all over Europe. As my children were growing up, they've had somebody in their home every year, and that was a beautiful time in our lives to share our life with the foreign exchange students. And one of them was from Brussels. Her dad was a mayor of one of the boroughs in Brussels. But when we went to visit them, they took us all over the place. And one of the places we took a day trip to was Amsterdam. We drove from Brussels to Amsterdam.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a blast to visit Europe. We've been very lucky in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and um, I think we've mentioned everything, and people know where to find you. And I just want to
And
thank you for this
thank you.
interview.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Yeah,
I
me too.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. And we see each other on the Quantum Healers Forum, probably.
Absolutely. Take
Okay,
care.
bye.